For me, productivity is not about getting more done, but instead about getting the same amount done in less time. This is one of the ways that we can expand our capacity. The more effective we are in one pillar, the more time, energy, and focus we have to devote into the others elsewhere in our day or our week. As a founder and owner of 2 businesses and a father of 3 boys, I need to be slick and efficient with how I do things so that everything that needs to get done gets done, whilst buying myself time back so that I can be as present as possible while still having a life outside of work. Too many blokes use "I'm busy" or "I don't have time" as the excuse for why they do not have time for business, health, relationships, self-development outside of work. It sounds noble, it implies that you're working hard, and if you say it to a friend, a colleague, or a team member, or a business partner, then they can relate, and this just validates this belief even more. The reality is, you do have the time to do what you need to do in all 6 pillars of your life. You just don't have the structure, the systems, or the accountability. When it comes to the systems, I'm referring to things like juggling your priorities, or moving each of your 6 life pillars into either priority or maintenance depending on what you're focusing on. Managing your time effectively, getting comfortable with saying no more frequently, or compartmentalizing what you need to do versus what you think you need to do. And we'll discuss these things in detail in other videos, but for this series, I want to specifically talk about cognitive performance. And this is your ability to lock in, focus, concentrate, and get more done in a dedicated block of time. You get more done in less time, not so that you can necessarily work more, but so that the tasks become less overwhelming. You're less likely to procrastinate, and you can buy back time in your day so that you can then spend what you have left learning new skills, having fun, training, eating well, spending more time outdoors, decompressing with fewer distractions, sitting with your thoughts, forming opinions, reflecting, and perhaps more importantly, being truly present with your partner and your kids. Now, most men who want to improve their cognitive performance start in the completely wrong place. They start with what we call in the sports science world marginal gains, interventions that yield a very small return on investment. Not that this return on investment isn't desired, of course, but the outcome isn't disproportionate to the effort required to obtain it. And these might be things like high-dose caffeine, nicotine, other supplements, or other novel interventions that may only improve output by a fraction of a percentage. None of it works as well as it should, because every single intervention in the cognitive performance space sits on top of one thing. And if that one thing is broken, nothing else impacts it as effectively as it should. And that thing is sleep. Now, I know it's probably not as interesting as the sexier, more glamorous interventions or methods, but it's important that we start here as a foundation. We'll get into the sexier stuff later within this series, but if you don't get your sleep quality and quantity right, at least most of the time, then everything else is just a waste of time. As the saying goes, you're stepping over dollars to pick up dimes. While the first topic in the series might not be as exciting as the others, please don't skip past it. Don't skip to the next episode before watching this one, because getting this one right will make all of the other episodes come together and work much more effectively. If your sleep is compromised in quality and or in quantity, no supplement, no caffeine timing hack, no nutritional protocol will give you the cognitive output that you're looking for. You cannot outgrind a sleep deficit. You cannot out-supplement it. You cannot optimize your way around it. And you cannot repay sleep debt with one lie-in. So in this video, the first in a series, it's about getting sleep right. Not the surface level advice you've heard 100 times, the actual biology and the mechanisms behind it, and the 5 specific rules that make the biggest difference. Now, it's important that we go over this first, the 2 chemicals. There are 2 chemicals that run your sleep-wake cycle. If you understand how they work, everything else in this video becomes obvious. If you don't, the 5 rules will sound arbitrary. So let's start here with some basic understanding. The first chemical is adenosine. Adenosine is what we call the sleep pressure molecule. It builds up in your brain across the entire waking day, starting from the moment you open your eyes. The longer you're awake, the more adenosine accumulates. And the more adenosine accumulates, the stronger the pressure to sleep becomes. Think of it as a chemical hourglass, let's say. When you wake up in the morning, the hourglass is mostly empty. By midday, it's half full. By the evening, it's nearly full. And the weight of that adenosine buildup is what drives you into sleep, creates that sleep pressure. If you've ever felt yourself nodding off or struggling to keep your eyes open, the likely cause is a significant buildup of adenosine in the brain that's creating this sleep pressure. Now, picture adenosine as a plug and the adenosine receptors like a socket. Caffeine works by blocking or closing the adenosine receptors or the socket. It prevents the plug going into the socket. It temporarily prevents your brain from feeling the adenosine that is already there. And what's important to note is the adenosine keeps building up behind that blockade. And when the caffeine eventually wears off, all of that accumulated adenosine rushes back into the receptors at once. And that is the caffeine crash, something that a lot of men experience mid-afternoon or quite commonly at some point in the evening, during a time when you're trying to be as present as possible with your kids. Maybe the house is chaotic and that tiredness sets in after a long day in work, resulting in you losing your temper or struggling to tolerate the noise, the chaos, and what feels like a never-ending to-do list of things that needs to get done before the kids go to bed. So it makes it harder. When we sleep at night, we process and metabolize this adenosine that's built up during the day. This also explains why you often wake up groggy even after what you think is a good night's sleep. That grogginess is residual adenosine that was not fully cleared during the night. It's completely normal, or at least common, and it's exactly why sleep quality and quantity matters. But also, the first hour of your day matters in a very specific way. But I'll come back to that in the next video when we get onto the topic of your morning routine. The second chemical is melatonin. If adenosine is the sleep pressure molecule, then melatonin is the signal for darkness. It's released by a small gland in the brain called the pineal gland. Its job is not to put you to sleep. Its job is to tell your body that it's nighttime, that the sun has gone down, that darkness has arrived, that the physiological transition towards sleep should begin, and it keeps you asleep and it deepens your sleep. But here's the issue. Melatonin is suppressed by light, specifically the slightest amount of light. And in this modern world, the final 2 or 3 hours before bed, the exact window when melatonin should be rising is the window when you are probably flooding your retinas with light from phones, laptops, TVs, and bright overhead lights. The result is mega predictable. Melatonin release is delayed, sleep onset is pushed back, and even if total sleep hours look adequate, the quality of that sleep is significantly degraded. Every bloke I've ever worked with, including full-time professional athletes who are well-versed in this stuff, in what's now over 15 years of coaching men, every single one of them has told me that their sleep is either okay or pretty good. Their belief is that they're spending around 7 hours in bed, then their sleep must be okay. They don't even consider it when it comes to their cognitive performance at work or in the management of their temper and enthusiasm at home. The reality is that every single one of those men's sleep was poor, if not dog shit. Once they overcame the narrative that sleep is a boring thing to work on, they made the necessary changes and started to feel what it was like to finally start performing at their best, physically, mentally, emotionally. So the 5 rules I'm about to give you are essentially an operating manual for these 2 chemicals. How to let adenosine build up properly during the day, and how to let melatonin rise properly at night. So here's the 5 sleep rules. These are not suggestions. These are the highest return changes you can make to your sleep, ranked by impact in the order in which I believe they should be prioritized. Rule number 1, cut caffeine 10 to 12 hours before bed. This is the single most common sleep hygiene mistake amongst high-performing blokes. And I mean high-performing. Entrepreneurs, executives, guys who take their health seriously in almost every other domain. They'll train maybe 3 to 5 days a week. Maybe they track their food intake in some way, shape or form. They think they're doing all of the right things. And then they'll drink a coffee at 3 in the afternoon. But they'll wonder why they then struggle to wake up with a spring in their step the following morning. Caffeine has a half-life of approximately 5 to 6 hours in most adults. That means if you drink a coffee at 2 p.m., roughly half of that caffeine is still circulating in your system at 8 p.m. A quarter is still in your system at 2 a.m. So take a large coffee from Starbucks, for example. Most of these contain 3, maybe even 4 shots of espresso. If you were to have one of these at 2 p.m. in the afternoon, it's likely that you'd still have the equivalent of one whole espresso circulating in your body at 2 a.m. That caffeine is actively blocking adenosine receptors while you are trying to sleep. Now, you might be unconscious, you might think you're asleep, but you're not getting deep sleep. So the practical rule, if you plan to go to bed at 10 p.m., which is a reasonable target for most hardworking blokes, your last caffeine intake should be between 10 a.m. and noon. Ideally 10 a.m., 12 hours before. That's a much earlier cutoff than most men stick to. And it's the single biggest change that will improve your sleep more than anything else on this list. And you might resist it. You're going to tell me that you drink a coffee at 4 p.m. and you still sleep fine. But I'd invite you to test that assumption. Cut caffeine at noon or preferably 10 a.m. for 1 week. Monitor how you feel when you wake up. Track your deep sleep if you have a wearable. Most men discover that they were just tolerating poor sleep, not sleeping well. Rule 2. Stop eating 3 hours before bed. Digestion is metabolically active. When your body is still processing food the moment you try to sleep, two things happen. One, your core temperature stays elevated. Your body generates heat as it breaks down food. But sleep requires a drop in core temperature, about 1 or 2 degrees Celsius across the night. If you're still digesting, that drop is delayed and sleep onset is delayed with it. 2, your autonomic nervous system stays in a more sympathetic state. Sympathetic means alert, fight or flight, the opposite of the parasympathetic, rest and digest state you need to enter sleep. You're literally keeping your body in a low-grade stress response while asking it to switch off. A 3-hour fasting window before bed solves both problems. It allows digestion to complete and core temperature to begin its natural evening decline. And it allows your nervous system to shift towards the parasympathetic state that sleep requires. Now, whilst this isn't about weight loss, for a lot of men, this naturally reduces their overall calorie intake. Because for a lot of blokes, the time when they are consuming the foods that they probably shouldn't is after their evening meal, perhaps when the kids have gone to bed. And they convince themselves that they now need some me time to switch off from the day. But as I say, this isn't about fat loss, it's about sleep, specifically the amount of deep, slow wave sleep you get. And this is the stage of sleep most critical for cognitive recovery, memory consolidation. And it is this stage that is most disrupted by late night eating. Rule number 3, no screens 2 hours before bed. This is the rule that you've no doubt heard of, but I want you to understand why it matters, because the reason goes deeper than most people think. Yes, screens ultimately limit a lot of light, a lot of blue wavelength light. And yes, blue light suppresses melatonin. If you're staring at a phone in a dark room an hour before bed, your pineal gland is getting the signal that it's still daytime. Melatonin release is delayed, sleep quality suffers. And before you consider purchasing blue light glasses, the impact of these is nowhere near as significant as what the manufacturers will tell you they are. And you're just spending money on something to justify a habit or a behavior that you know needs to stop. There is, however, a second layer to all of this, and it might be even more important. The content on your screens, the emails, the social media, the news, the messages, the entertainment, it all keeps your brain in an active, problem-solving, emotionally engaged state. That is fundamentally incompatible with the parasympathetic shift you need to fall asleep. You're asking your brain to process work stress, social dynamics, existential dread, entertainment, and then immediately switch into rest mode. And it doesn't work that way. 2 hours of screen-free time before bed is the ideal. Now, I get it. There are going to be times when you might have to work late. One of the primary reasons I work for myself is the freedom and flexibility that I have around my work so that I can shift work tasks around to accommodate the times when I need to be there to enjoy time with my kids and my family. That does sometimes mean that I'm myself on my laptop at 9, 10, 11 p.m. at night. So what I'm suggesting here isn't about being perfect 7 days a week. It's about incorporating these behaviors more often than not, maybe 5 out of 7 days a week or more than just half the time. What I think is a better approach personally is trying to get your head around the fact that the earlier you go to bed, the earlier you can wake up. It's going to be far more effective for you to do the work that you think you need to do the following morning than it is to stay up late the night before. One of the best things I ever did was starting to go to bed with my kids. Their bedtime routine is my bedtime routine. It's quality time for us. We go for a walk, we have a bath, read a book. I'm typically asleep by 8 or 8:30, which means I can often be up without an alarm even at 3:30, 4 a.m. in the morning. If work tasks are my priority, then I can do these things much more effectively in the quiet with no distractions when everyone's in bed first thing in the morning. Rule number 4, no ambient light 1 hour before bed. Now this is the next level of light discipline, and it's the one that almost nobody thinks about. Even dim ambient light, a hallway light you left on, a street lamp outside, they can partially suppress melatonin. Your brain interprets any light as a signal that it is not yet fully dark. And if it's not yet fully dark, it's not yet time to release the full surge of melatonin. And the biggest mistake you can make is factoring in all of these points that I've made previously in this video already, and then going up to the bathroom, flicking on the main bathroom light in order to then brush your teeth within minutes of getting in bed. In the final hour before you go to sleep, you want near total darkness. Blackout curtains if you have an outside light. If you need to see, brush your teeth, move around the room, use a very dim, warm, low-placed light. Low-placed meaning below eye level. The relevant photoreceptors in our eyes are in the lower half of the retina, so light from above hits them directly. Light from below is less disruptive, so use lamps or accent lighting, preferably placed below waist height. Now I don't have these, but what I do is I turn the light on in the room next to the bathroom. I use ambient light from that room to light the bathroom when I'm brushing my teeth. And this one change, going from pretty dark to actually dark, is often the difference between adequate sleep and optimal sleep, and it costs nothing and takes just a few seconds to implement. And the effect is definitely measurable. Rule number 5, take a hot bath or a shower before bed. To get optimal, good quality sleep, the body's core temperature needs to drop by around 1 to 2 degrees Celsius. So taking a hot bath or a shower probably sounds counterintuitive. If you want to sleep, why would you want to heat yourself up? Well, a hot bath or a shower raises your skin temperature and causes something called vasodilation. The blood vessels near to the surface of your skin, they open up. When you step out the bath, your core body temperature drops rapidly as heat is released through those dilated blood vessels. And that drop in core temperature is one of the body's primary biological signals for sleep onset. Your core temperature naturally declines about 1 or 2 degrees Celsius across the night, and the steepest part of that decline happens around the time you fall asleep. So a hot bath 60 to 90 minutes before bed artificially accelerates this drop, and you'll fall asleep faster and spend more time in deep sleep. This is one of the most reliably researched sleep interventions in the entire scientific literature, and almost nobody does it because you don't have time. So these are 5 rules. Cut caffeine 10, 12 hours, preferably before bed. Stop eating 3 hours before. No screens 2 hours before. No ambient light 1 hour before. And a hot bath or shower 60 to 90 minutes before. If you implement these 5 rules and change nothing else, your sleep will improve measurably. And because the sleep is the foundation of everything else in this protocol with regards to cognitive performance, improving your sleep will improve your focus, your concentration, your emotional regulation, and your cognitive output, your decision making the following day. Not marginally, significantly. Again, I'll stress that the goal here is not to be perfect 7 days a week. Don't attach the all or nothing mentality to this. Don't assume that if you can't do this 7 days a week, then there's no point in starting. That's just a narrative that your chimp is creating to keep you from doing what you need to do to see the changes and the improvements you want to make. I know you're busy. I know you don't feel as though there's enough time in the day. Adding these things to your day when you already feel that way might sound like too much to ask. It's worth it. And as I say, the best way for me to do all of these things is to factor it into my kids' bedtime routine. And their bedtime routine becomes my bedtime routine. And no, I don't do it 7 days a week. Yes, there are times when I'm still having to catch up on work because I've spent the day prioritizing time with the kids. But if 4 or 5 days out of 7, I'm going to bed early and implementing these things into my routine just as much as I am with the kids, then I'm able to wake up earlier and performing better, not just in work, but also with my tolerance level, my temper, my enthusiasm, and my energy for everything else. This is one of the ways that we expand our capacity. Now, sleep is only half of the equation. Sleep clears the adenosine and it restores the brain. What you do in the morning activates the brain's arousal system so that you enter the day sharp, switched on, and enthusiastic instead of feeling as though you're dragging a ball and chain behind you. So in the next video, we're covering the morning wakefulness routine, the 3 specific behaviors that you can do in the first 90 minutes after waking up that determine whether you're operating at full capacity or running at half speed. And these things, I must add, don't take 90 minutes to do. You just factor them into the first 90 minutes of your day that already exists. If you want the morning routine that sits on top of everything that we just covered, it's on screen now. Click through and I'll see you in there.